My name is Julian Carver, and I'm 35 years old. For the past 8 years, I've worked as a senior financial analyst at Goldman Sachs in Manhattan, pulling in around $185,000 a year. Not bad for a kid who grew up in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Queens. I always believed that hard work and dedication would build the foundation for a solid family life. Claudia and I met during my second year at Columbia Business School. She was studying marketing at NYU, and we connected at a networking event in Midtown. Back then, she seemed to share my vision of building something meaningful together. We got married 3 years later in 2018, and Noah came along when I was 33 in 2022. That little boy became my whole world. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video, and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. For months leading up to Christmas 2023, I noticed Claudia growing distant. She'd leave our Park Slope brownstone for girls' nights that stretched past midnight. Her iPhone was suddenly password protected, and she'd angle it away whenever notifications popped up. When I asked about her day, her responses became shorter, vaguer. "How was lunch with Sarah?" I'd ask. "Fine," she'd say, not looking up from her phone. "Did you guys go to that new place in Soho?" "Yeah, something like that." The conversations that used to flow naturally now felt like pulling teeth. She'd disappear into the bathroom with her phone, claiming she needed to check work emails at 10 p.m. on weekends. Claudia worked part-time at a small advertising agency in Brooklyn Heights, making maybe $45,000 a year. I never questioned her dedication, but the sudden urgency around her phone seemed odd. 2 weeks before Christmas 2023, I found a receipt in her purse while looking for our insurance cards. Dinner for 2 at Le Bernardin, a $380 meal at one of Manhattan's most expensive restaurants. I knew it wasn't with me. I'd been working late that Tuesday, finishing quarterly reports until nearly 9 p.m. My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression neutral when she walked into the kitchen. "How was your evening with the girls?" I asked casually. "Oh, just grabbed pizza in the village," she replied, not missing a beat. "Nothing special." I folded the receipt carefully and slipped it into my wallet. That night, while Claudia slept, I sat in my home office staring at my computer screen. 5 years of marriage, and she was lying straight to my face about a dinner that cost more than some people's weekly salary. The next morning, I called my old law school roommate, David Martinez, who now runs a family law practice in Lower Manhattan. "Dave, I need some advice," I said quietly from my office. "Hypothetically speaking, what should someone do if they suspect their spouse of infidelity?" "Document everything," he said immediately. "Dates, times, receipts, changes in behavior. Don't confront until you have a complete picture. And Julian, get your finances in order. Separate accounts. Secure important documents. If this goes where I think it might, you'll want to be prepared." I spent the following days methodically gathering evidence. Bank statements showed charges at upscale restaurants and hotels I'd never been to. Her credit card revealed purchases at Victoria's Secret and expensive lingerie boutiques, items I'd never seen. Phone records, which I could access through our shared Verizon account, showed hundreds of calls and texts to an unknown number. During this time, I maintained our normal routine. I picked up Noah from daycare, helped with his bedtime routine, and made conversation with Claudia over dinner. Inside, I was calculating every move, but outwardly, I remained the same devoted husband and father. "Daddy, why does Mommy always look at her phone?" 1-year-old Noah asked one evening as I was reading him a story. "Sometimes grown-ups have important things to check," I said, kissing his forehead. "But right now, the most important thing is this story about the brave little bear." 3 days before Christmas, I hired a private investigator recommended by David. Within 48 hours, I had photographs of Claudia leaving a hotel in Tribeca with a man I didn't recognize. The timestamps matched exactly with one of her supposed girls' nights. I sat in my car outside Noah's daycare, looking at those photos, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. The hurt was there, but it was buried beneath something sharper. A plan was forming. Christmas Eve 2023 arrived with the usual chaos of family preparations. Claudia's parents drove down from Albany, and my sister Karen flew in from Chicago with her husband and 2 kids. Our brownstone filled with the sounds of children playing, and adults catching up over eggnog and wine. I moved through the evening like an actor playing a role I'd performed for years. Carving the ham, refilling drinks, making small talk about work and the kids' school activities. But behind my smile, I was mentally reviewing the documents David had prepared earlier that week. "Julian's been working so hard lately," Claudia announced to her mother while I was in the kitchen. "Always staying late at the office, barely home for dinner anymore." I paused, knife halfway through slicing the apple pie. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was already building her narrative, painting me as the absent husband to justify what was coming. "Well, providing for a family is important work," my mother-in-law replied diplomatically. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in my study with a glass of Macallan 18, a bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. The private investigator's final report lay open on my desk. Claudia had been seeing someone named Ryan Mitchell, a real estate developer who owned several luxury properties in Manhattan. They'd been meeting regularly for 3 months. The report included financial records showing Ryan's net worth at approximately $8 million. Phone records revealed they'd been texting daily, with messages starting as early as 6 a.m. and continuing past midnight. Hotel receipts showed they'd spent nights together at the Peninsula and the St. Regis while I was traveling for work conferences. I closed the folder and opened my laptop. David had sent me the final draft of several documents earlier that evening. Custody agreements, asset protection trusts, revised beneficiary forms for my 401k and life insurance policies. Everything designed to shield what I'd worked for, while ensuring Noah's future remained secure. The next morning, Christmas Day, I woke early and made pancakes for Noah. He sat in his high chair, syrup covering his fingers, babbling happily about the presents under the tree. Claudia appeared around 9 a.m. looking unusually put together for Christmas morning. Her hair was perfectly styled, and she wore a new red dress I'd never seen. "You look nice," I said, genuinely meaning it. "New dress?" "Oh, this old thing?" she replied, but her cheeks flushed slightly. "I've had it for ages." The receipt in my evidence folder said otherwise. "Lord and Taylor, purchased 3 days ago for $285. By afternoon, both our families had gathered around the dining room table. Claudia's parents, my sister and her family, my elderly aunt from the Bronx. 23 people total, including the kids. The table was set with my grandmother's china, candles flickering, the smell of turkey and stuffing filling the air. I'd just finished saying grace when Claudia stood up abruptly. "Before we eat," she announced, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, "I have something for Julian." My stomach tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. "Claudia, presents can wait until after dinner." "No, this can't wait," she said, pulling an envelope from her purse. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice remained steady. "This is something I've been thinking about for a long time." The room fell completely silent. Even the children seemed to sense the tension. My sister Karen was looking back and forth between us, confusion written across her face. Claudia placed the envelope in front of me with deliberate ceremony. "Merry Christmas, Julian." I stared at the envelope for a moment, then looked up at her. Her eyes held a mixture of defiance and something else. Satisfaction, maybe. She thought this moment would destroy me. She thought I'd break down in front of our families, beg her to reconsider, make a scene that would embarrass both of us. Instead, I opened the envelope calmly and removed the documents inside. Petition for dissolution of marriage, filed in Brooklyn Family Court, her signature already notarized at the bottom. "Divorce papers," I said quietly, setting them aside. "On Christmas Day, in front of our families. Julian, My mother-in-law started to speak, but I held up my hand gently. "It's okay, Margaret," I said. "Claudia's made her decision. I respect that." The table erupted in shocked whispers. My aunt gasped. Karen's husband was trying to distract the children. Claudia's father looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. But Claudia looked confused. This wasn't the reaction she'd expected. She'd wanted drama, tears, pleading. Instead, I folded the papers carefully and slipped them into my jacket pocket. "Should we say grace again?" I asked the table. "I think we could all use a moment of reflection." What Claudia didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been expecting this moment for 2 weeks. David and I had spent hours preparing for exactly this scenario. The custody papers were already filed. The asset protection trusts were already executed. The bank accounts were already separated. While she'd been planning her grand gesture, I'd been planning my entire defense. After dinner, as family members made awkward small talk and began leaving early, Claudia cornered me in the kitchen. "You're taking this remarkably well," she said suspiciously. "What choice do I have?" I replied, loading dishes into the dishwasher. "You want out, you want out. I'm not going to beg someone to stay who doesn't want to be here." She studied my face, searching for cracks in my composure. "I'll be staying at my sister's for a while, until we can work out the details." "Of course," I said. "Take whatever clothes you need, we'll figure out the rest through our lawyers." The word lawyers seemed to catch her off guard. She'd probably assumed I'd be too emotional to think practically. "You already have a lawyer?" she asked. "Claudia, you just served me divorce papers on Christmas Day in front of our entire family. Did you think I wouldn't need legal representation?" That night, after everyone had gone and Noah was asleep, I sat alone in my living room looking at the Christmas tree. The house felt different already. Quieter, but not necessarily sadder. More like the calm before a storm that I was fully prepared to weather. The week between Christmas and New Year's 2023 passed in a strange routine. Claudia moved most of her belongings to her sister's apartment in Williamsburg, coming by the house only when I was at work to collect more items. I'd installed a Ring doorbell camera the day after Christmas, so I knew exactly when she visited and what she took. Noah kept asking where Mommy was. "She's staying with Aunt Lisa for a little while," I told him during our morning routine of cereal and cartoons. "But you'll see her soon." What I didn't tell him was that Claudia hadn't asked to take him with her. She'd packed her designer clothes, her jewelry, her expensive skincare products, but she'd left behind every photo of Noah, every artwork he'd made for her, every trace of motherhood. It told me everything I needed to know about her priorities. On December 30th, 2023, my phone rang during lunch. David Martinez. "Julian, we need to meet. Today. Claudia's attorney just filed some interesting motions." I met David at his office in the financial district 2 hours later. His conference room overlooked the East River, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows I could see Brooklyn Heights where Claudia was staying. "She's claiming you've been hiding assets," David said, sliding a folder across the mahogany table. "She wants half of everything, including your Goldman Sachs stock options and your grandfather's inheritance. She's also requesting $7,500 a month in spousal support." I opened the folder and scanned the legal documents. Claudia's attorney had painted a picture of me as a controlling husband who'd kept her financially dependent while building a secret fortune. The filing claimed I'd systematically isolated her from financial decisions, and that she was entitled to compensation for sacrificing her career potential for our marriage. $7,500 a month, I repeated slowly. That's $90,000 a year. Plus she wants the house, David added. claims it's necessary for Noah's stability. I leaned back in the leather chair and almost smiled. This was exactly what I'd expected. Claudia had always been motivated by money, but I'd underestimated her greed. She wasn't just leaving me. She was trying to take everything I'd worked for. David, do you remember what we discussed about the asset protection trust? Already executed. He nodded. 1 week ago. Your house, your investment accounts, and your stock options are all protected. Legally, you don't own them anymore. The trust does. And the inheritance from my grandfather? That money was never commingled with marital assets. It's been in a separate account since before you were married. She has no claim to it. I pulled out my phone and showed David a text message I'd received that morning. She wants to meet tomorrow to discuss things reasonably before the lawyers get too involved. Exact words. Don't, David said immediately. Any communication should go through me. Actually, I think I should meet with her. But I want you there, and I want everything recorded. David raised an eyebrow. What are you planning? She thinks I'm going to cave under pressure. She's counting on me being the same pushover who let her make all the social decisions for 5 years. I think it's time to show her exactly who she's dealing with. The meeting was scheduled for January the 2nd, 2024 at David's office. Claudia arrived with her attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Wells who specialized in high-asset divorces. Claudia looked confident, almost triumphant. She'd had her hair professionally styled and wore a new Burberry coat I'd never seen. Julian, she said, settling into the chair across from me. I'm glad we can handle this civilly. Of course, I replied. For Noah's sake. Patricia Wells opened her briefcase and placed several documents on the table. We're prepared to be reasonable, Mr. Carver. Mrs. Carver is willing to accept a lump sum settlement of $2 million plus the house, in lieu of ongoing spousal support. I nodded thoughtfully. That's generous of her. Unfortunately, I don't have $2 million to give. Claudia's composure cracked slightly. Julian, don't be ridiculous. Your salary alone? My salary is $185,000 a year before taxes. After taxes, my 401k contributions and living expenses, I save maybe $32,000 annually. You do the math. What about your stock options? Patricia pressed. Your investment accounts? The inheritance from your grandfather? David slid a folder across the table. Mr. Carver's financial disclosure is complete and accurate. His net worth as of today is approximately $75,000. That includes his checking account, his car, and his personal belongings. I watched Claudia's face turn pale. That's impossible. The house alone is worth $1.1 million. The house belongs to the Carver Family Trust, David explained calmly. Mr. Carver has no ownership interest in it. Since when? Claudia demanded. Since 3 weeks ago, I said quietly. Right around the time I found the receipt from Le Bernardin in your purse. The room fell silent. Claudia stared at me, and I saw the exact moment she realized I'd been planning this much longer than she had. You can't just transfer assets to avoid divorce settlement, Patricia said, but her voice lacked conviction. Mr. Carver executed the trusts for estate planning purposes in 2021, which is completely legal, David replied. The trusts benefit his son, Noah, and were funded as part of long-term financial planning. Mrs. Carver is welcome to challenge it in court, but I should warn you that the trusts were created with proper legal counsel and documentation well before any marital issues arose. Claudia's confident facade was crumbling. Julian, this is ridiculous. We can work this out. I don't need $2 million. We can negotiate. Of course we can negotiate, I agreed. I'm prepared to offer you $20,000 and your personal belongings. That's fair, considering your contribution to our marital assets. My contribution, she sputtered. I was your wife for 5 years. You were my wife for 5 years while I worked 60-hour weeks to build our life. You contributed a part-time salary of $45,000 and a credit card bill that averaged $2,800 a month on clothes and dinners I never attended. I pulled out a folder of my own. Bank statements, credit card bills, receipts. 5 years of financial records, all meticulously organized. Would you like to go through these together? I asked pleasantly. We can calculate exactly how much you contributed versus how much you spent. Claudia looked at Patricia, who was frantically taking notes. This isn't over, Claudia said, standing abruptly. You're absolutely right, I replied, remaining seated. We still need to discuss custody arrangements for Noah. As they left, I heard Claudia's voice in the hallway, high and panicked. He can't do this. There has to be something we can do. David closed the conference room door and sat back down. How do you feel? Like I've been preparing for this conversation my entire adult life, I said. She never understood that being quiet doesn't mean being weak. February 2024 arrived with a series of increasingly frantic phone calls from Claudia. She'd apparently consulted 3 different attorneys, all of whom told her the same thing. The Asset Protection Trust was legally bulletproof, and her chances of overturning it were virtually zero. Julian, please, she said during one particularly desperate call. We need to talk, just the 2 of us. No lawyers. Everything goes through David now, I replied calmly. That's what you wanted when you filed for divorce. I made a mistake, she said, her voice breaking. I was confused, going through something. We can fix this. I was feeding Noah dinner when she called, watching him carefully navigate his spoon to his mouth. He'd grown so much in just 2 months. More words. More independence. Kids are resilient in ways adults never are. Claudia, you weren't confused when you spent 380s on dinner with Ryan Mitchell at Le Bernardin. You weren't confused when you booked hotel rooms at the Peninsula. You made very deliberate choices. The silence on the other end stretched for nearly 30 seconds. How long have you known? She finally asked. Long enough, I said. Long enough to make sure Noah and I would be protected. The custody hearing was scheduled for March 15th, 2024. Patricia Wells tried one final Hail Mary, claiming I'd manipulated the situation and that Noah needed his mother's influence. She painted me as a cold, calculating man who'd prioritized revenge over his child's well-being. Judge Rebecca Martinez, no relation to my attorney David, reviewed the evidence methodically. Claudia's abandonment of the marital home, her failure to request custody, or even visitation during the initial separation. The private investigator's photos showing her relationship with Ryan Mitchell while still married. Mrs. Carver, Judge Martinez said, looking over her glasses, you filed for divorce on Christmas Day in front of both families, moved out of the marital home, and made no provisions for your 2-year-old son's care. Can you explain this decision? Claudia dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I was overwhelmed, Your Honor. I made mistakes, but I love Noah. I want to be part of his life. Mr. Carver has proposed a visitation schedule of every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. The judge continued. Do you find this acceptable? I want joint custody, Claudia insisted. 50-50. David stood up. Your Honor, Mrs. Carver has seen the child exactly 4 times since leaving the marital home on December 26, 2023. She's made no financial contribution to his care, and she's currently living in a 1-bedroom apartment with her sister. Mr. Carver has maintained Noah's routine, his daycare, his medical appointments, and his daily care without interruption. Judge Martinez awarded me primary custody with Claudia receiving supervised visitation every other Saturday for 4 hours. The child support was set at $750 per month, based on her declared income of $45,000 per year. As we left the courthouse, Claudia grabbed my arm. Julian, this isn't who you are. You're not vindictive. I stopped and looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time in months. She looked older, tired. The confidence and self-satisfaction were gone, replaced by something desperate and hollow. You're right, I said. I'm not vindictive. I'm protective. There's a difference. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my private investigator. Claudia's relationship with Ryan Mitchell had ended abruptly. Apparently, he'd lost interest when he learned she wouldn't be receiving a multi-million-dollar divorce settlement. She was back to living with her sister and had started working full-time at the advertising agency. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall. If anything, I felt tired. Tired of the anger, tired of the strategy, tired of living in defense mode. Noah deserved better than parents who communicated through lawyers and court orders. That evening, I sat in Noah's room watching him sleep. The room was exactly as it had been when Claudia lived here, except now it felt more peaceful. No tension, no whispered arguments, no phones buzzing with secret messages at all hours. My phone rang. David Martinez. final divorce decree came through, he said. It's over, officially. Good, I said quietly. Thank you for everything. Julian, I have to ask, do you regret any of it? The way you handled things? I thought about it for a long moment. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that Noah will grow up with divorced parents. I regret that Claudia chose to betray our family instead of talking to me about whatever was missing in her life. But the strategy, the trust, the way you protected yourself? No, I said without hesitation. I don't regret protecting my son's future. I don't regret refusing to reward betrayal with a fortune. She made her choice on Christmas Day when she humiliated our family. I just made sure I was prepared for it. By summer 2024, Noah and I had settled into our new routine. Saturday morning pancakes, afternoon trips to Prospect Park, evening stories before bed. He asked about Mommy less frequently now, though he still lit up during their supervised visits every other weekend. I started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee dates and the occasional dinner. It felt strange at first being honest about my situation, my priorities, my boundaries, but it also felt refreshing. No secrets, no hidden phones, no mysterious receipts. One evening in July 2024, while Noah, now nearly 3 years old, played with building blocks on the living room floor, I reflected on everything that had happened. Claudia had tried to destroy me with drama and public humiliation, expecting me to crumble under the pressure. Instead, her actions had freed me from a marriage built on deception. The revenge she'd planned, serving divorce papers on Christmas Day, had backfired completely. By trying to catch me off guard, she'd revealed her true nature at exactly the moment when I was most prepared to defend myself. I never had to raise my voice, never had to make threats, never had to play dirty. I simply used the law, patience, and careful planning to ensure that justice prevailed. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is no revenge at all, just refusing to be a victim. Noah looked up from his blocks and smiled at me. "Daddy, look, I built a castle." His vocabulary had exploded in recent months. Complex sentences were becoming natural for him. "That's amazing, buddy," I said, sitting down next to him on the floor. "Want to build another one together?" As we stacked blocks in comfortable silence, I realized that this quiet evening with my son, this peaceful home, this life built on honesty and hard work, was worth more than any vindictive satisfaction could ever be. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment telling us what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.